and I hadn't been in New York, and they said, just go find any big company in New York to sell to. So I had a cousin that said, oh, the network, the CBS network, the television network, CBS, oh, wow, they have a lot of equipment. They need computer technology. Try those guys. He says, I've done business with them. They're okay to do business with. So I had two other sales guys that were in my team, and they said, oh, you can't ever talk to anybody at CBS. They will never talk to you. And I go, why? And he says, well, because they only buy IBM equipment, and ours is not IBM equipment. And I said, yeah, okay. And I said, on top of it, they're resistant to change. There's no new innovation going on there. I go, okay, but let me just call and see what happens. So I call, and I get the secretary, and she says, oh, thank you for calling. I'll give the vice president your name. And I did this like every day for 2 weeks. Oh, yeah, he was busy. He's not able to get back with you. He's in meetings. Okay, no problem. Finally, at about 7 o'clock in the evening, I was working late, I called. Guess what? His secretary was gone. He answered the phone. Because he was working late. And I said, oh, wow, man, I'm glad I got you, but I won't take much of your time. I just wanted to, I talked to your secretary, and she said, you're real busy, but that you might have time to meet me for lunch. I said, do you ever take lunch? He goes, yeah, sometimes. I said, well, I'm new to the area. I don't know any good restaurants in New York City. If you could schedule a lunch at the nicest restaurant in New York City, I'll buy you lunch. He goes, call me in 2 weeks. 2 weeks from the day, I called him. He says, okay, yeah, I did say I'd have you for lunch. How about, and come in on 2 days, 2 or 3 days. I said, fine. He says, meet me at my office. I'll take you to a restaurant. So I get there. Yeah, he comes down. He doesn't even take me up to his offices. Comes down in the lobby. He says, let's go. Nice to meet you. I said, where are we going? He said, to the nicest restaurant in New York. Well, that means the most expensive restaurant in New York. So I go, I didn't bother. I didn't care. I said, so we go to this place called Latesse, which is like a French restaurant that is like, the appetizers at the time. The appetizer was $20 for lunch, not at dinner, just lunch, So I didn't care. So he's sitting down, and it's a white tablecloth, really fancy, everything's fancy, And so I'm not even telling him what business I'm in. I'm just saying, well, where do you live, and how long have you worked there, and how did you get into managing technology, and what sports teams do you like? Just small talk, And so, that went on. We had dinner, we had lunch, we had dessert, and he says, oh, I only have an hour for lunch. I'm going to have to get back. I said, no problem. So I check it. I said, listen, I got to thank you. This is the best lunch I've ever had. I said, do you know any more restaurants like this? He says, yeah, a lot. I said, can I call you in a couple weeks and let's go to another restaurant? He said, sure. I mean, this lunch was like $150 lunch, But hey, I had expenses, no problem. I called him in a couple weeks. I said, Joe, any chance we can see you this day? He said, yeah, Mike. I got a place for it? Yeah. We do the same routine a second time. We just talk about, hey, the sports, the challenges he's having in his job, all of this stuff. He doesn't even know what I have, what I'm selling. I'm not telling him. At the end of the meal, I paid for the meal, another great lunch. I said, man, this is another great lunch. I said, man, I got to come in and see you more often because every time all the good restaurants. So we get up to leave, and he says, Mike, I don't even know what you do. I said, Joe, it doesn't really make any difference because we're eating lunch together. He doesn't. He says, no, I want to know what you do.
Oh, he's curious.
He's curious. So I said, well, here's a little brochure. I pulled it out of my briefcase. I said, but, next time if you want me to come, before we go to lunch, I'll come by your office and we'll just talk. Then we can go to have another great lunch. He said, sure. 2 weeks later, same kind of routine, set it up. This time he lets me up to his office. He introduces me to his secretary. Oh, I've talked to you on the phone so many times. It's so nice to meet you. He says, okay, so we have this meeting. I explained to him what we do. He says, that's really interesting because we have a problem that might be able to solve. And I said, well, I'd like to talk about it, but I think we should go to lunch and I can come back another time and talk more about it. So we went and had a great lunch, and he says, you've got to come back like next week. He's telling me, setting the appointment for me. The end of the day, he's all in. He wants this thing. He's got to have it. He's like taking a company that never bought anything from a non-IBM supplier, and he's taking me to the executive and saying, we need this to make our company superior to anybody else. End of story. They bought. But